First off, 50 or so years ago, I would have identified myself as a feminist, but the feminist movement no longer holds the same values or goals as feminists 50 or so years ago did. So nowadays I've taken to calling myself a humanist. Yes, I know the name's taken already. And if at some point we discover sentient life on other planets and we wind up having superior technology to them and don't get into a massive intergalactic war in the grimdark future where millions of people die every single day, I will probably take to calling myself a universal sentient beingist, at least until I find a better name. Now, why nowadays do I adopt the title humanist instead of feminist? Well, present-day feminism adopts quite a few philosophical problems that will inevitably prove to be self-destructive, in my opinion. There's two types of people who call themselves feminists. There's the people who legitimately want full equality, but in terms of the feminists I come across, those people tend to be a minority, unfortunately. Most feminists, at least the ones that I meet, tend to adopt a very irrational and non-sustainable stance that focuses on short-term benefits at long-term costs. I'll give you an example of a feminist like this. I got into a conversation with one woman, and the point of equal responsibility came up. A problem with most modern-day feminists is they want the benefits of being male, but do not want the costs of being male. They do not want the responsibilities of being male. I eventually managed to back this person into a corner and got her to answer directly why she felt entitled to obtain the freedoms of being male without the responsibilities. And her response was, and I'm going to quote her directly, "Well, we deserve it for all the injustices we have suffered, just like black people deserve compensation for slavery." So for the sake of argument, let's assume that this statement is completely true and everyone agreed on that and we passed a bunch of legislation on that. This is still self-defeating in the long run. I view most people who call themselves feminists nowadays as selfish people who want short-term gains for themselves, as women, in return for massive long-term costs for women as a whole further down the line. Now, this doesn't apply to all feminists, but it does apply to the majority of feminists that I come across, a specific brand of feminism. Now, how do I come to the conclusion that it's self-destructive? Well, let's look at it historically. There was a point in time where women had to adopt the role of being protected and preserved because women were more valuable than men for the survival of the species. One male could, in terms of sustaining the species, do the work of many. One woman cannot do the work of 100 women as efficiently as a man could do the work for 100 men, in terms of sustaining the species. So women get special protections and special benefits while the guy goes and hunts a boar, does dangerous stuff. Except, after a few generations of this, women are not really people anymore. The men do everything that's important for short-term survival, they do all the work, and one woman is physically not capable of doing the work of 100 women in terms of creating offspring, where one man can do the work of 100 men. At this point, women in society become a resource. They're being given all these special handicaps and benefits and perks that are on an individual level really nice and really useful because they don't have to do anything dangerous, whereas the men go and risk their lives. But it comes at the long-term cost of women as a whole, because in a short time they stop being perceived as people and start being perceived as a resource to be hoarded or property to be used. Nowadays this is no longer a requirement, because now people live a great deal longer and an individual person can contribute to sustaining the species more efficiently. For example, due to medical advancements, infant mortality rate has dropped. But can you objectively define a woman as a person if you were in this scenario? Men are people. They do all the work to feed people for the short-term survival, and they place their lives on the line. The women are far more protected and more valued, yes, but they are still not viewed as equals. They are protected and valued because you protect and value your property and your resources. Any man in this situation begins to lose the ability to perceive women who do not hunt and fight alongside them as actual people. And how can they not? How do you objectively call them your equal human being in this situation? Roles are different, yes. People have different skill sets. Somebody may be good at golf, someone else may be good at tennis. But in this particular case, it goes to the extreme where a role is created based off of the person's value, or at least the perceived value. And history merely repeats itself. We're doing it again today. Feminists are demanding the equal perks of being male without accepting the equal responsibilities. And when you corner a feminist on this point, at least in my case, they made the claim that they deserved this special treatment as some sort of compensation. History doesn't work that way. All this is doing is making it even harder for men to accept women as equals because women are refusing to do the very things that objectively define them as equals. If you pretend to be a duck, and you call yourself a duck, yet you don't quack like a duck, all the other ducks ask you why you call yourself a duck, and instead of explaining why, The response I usually get is, "You're a bigot for not blindly accepting my claim of being a duck as fact." How about a more up-to-date example? I'm an American, and in America, if you are male, when you turn 18 you have to register for the SS, Selective Service. That's another name for what we call the draft. The government can, at any time, decide that they want you to join the military. If you refuse to register for the draft, you go to prison. If you don't join the military when you're selected, you go to prison. Women do not have to register for the draft. Only men do. This is not because women are perceived as highly valuable or superior beings worthy of our dedication and protection. This is because women are viewed as inferior candidates for the job. Because only men can be real soldiers and women are simply below us and unfit for duty. Another example in our military would be the military academy at West Point. They have, at least the last time I checked, a minimum requirement of female candidates to accept into the academy. Due to this minimum quota, someone who is female who scores across the board in every category much more poorly than a male counterpart will still obtain the slot despite being less qualified for it in the interest of filling out this quota. As such, the academy is also less likely to penalize or kick out females. Here's what you need to understand. You're not being viewed and looked at as a special or equals worthy of praise. You're not being given some sort of compensation out of respect for you. You're being given handicaps because you're perceived as being unfit and unable to complete the necessary challenges yourself. As such, you are less respected. One of the largest areas where you will find stigma against women is in the military, and what I just went over is the reason why. Modern-day feminism works to create the image that women are weak, inferior beings who need handicaps, and feminists who work for this intentionally are, in my opinion, very selfish, because what they are doing comes at the long-term cost of women further down the line, in return for short-term gains for the individual woman supporting it. And that's why no one takes feminism seriously nowadays. Now, what good is criticism without presenting some sort of alternative solution? It's easy to criticize feminism, it's easy to criticize just about everything, but my criticism wouldn't really matter if I didn't at least offer some sort of alternative opinion. I might elaborate on this point in a later video, but since I'm running out of time, here's a shorter version that may serve to illustrate the point. The best way to fix sexism, in my opinion, is to flatten the board and prove that women are capable equals, not by demanding special treatment without proof. You can yell and claim that demanding proof is bigoted, and even if I agreed with you, that would still not be a sustainable solution for the problem because history does not support it, and society cannot support it for any protracted period of time. I think that if we flattened the playing field without giving either side special perks, racism would go down, sexism would go down. The problem with that is that we actually had these problems in society years ago, and we still had both population imbalances after they were fixed. For example, when women first got the right to vote, not many of them could do much with their newfound freedom because a lot of them were still at the time housewives because they've lived that way all their lives previously. But hypothetically speaking, suppose I equalized all standards for the military. Let's say 85% of men meet the requirements and 15% of men drop out and fail. Let's say 85% of females drop out and fail, and 15% of females meet the requirements. Let's say it's due to blatant physical tests, and the 85% of women who keep failing are due to obvious physical lacks due to gender differences. This isn't sexism, that's the law of probability. If those 15% of women who make it are still being treated the same as the 85% of males, then that is real equality. Being equal doesn't mean that the military should be comprised of 50% male and 50% female. That's not equal. That's intentional distortion of the statistics to make one group feel better about itself. Equality means that everyone is given an equal and fair chance and get to do with it what they please. If you don't like that it would be 85% male and 15% female, tough luck. If you would have me create a 50% female and 50% male organization of any kind, purely for the sake of it being equal, then you are creating a different standard of requirements for people to meet purely on the basis of the person's gender. By any definition, that is sexism. And if you would do that and ask for those handicaps, then you are the sexist, not me. And yes, if I became the president, I would make women register for the draft too. Problem? Tell me, oh feminists, or people who call themselves feminists, rather, will you vote yes when I am passing a bill through Congress to draft women to go fight wars just like men? Or do you want to keep your precious short-term handicaps, knowing it will come at the long-term cost of women? And if you would trade the future away like that, how are you in any objective way an equal person to me? That's all I have time for today. I actually have a few ideas on how to fix sexism in the military and various other organizations if I ever obtain any real power. I suppose if people want to see that and hear a greater elaboration of my ideology, I can make a video elaborating on that if there's enough interest. But for now, leave a comment, like the video. Emphasis on the leave a comment part. Feel free to share your opinions and ideology. And hey, if you're a feminist, feel free to attempt to dispute any part of my argument. This is a critical thinking video to encourage people to think for themselves, so go ahead. Try to provide a counterpoint. Leave a comment. Try to challenge my views. Free thinking is welcome here. Just make sure you back up your opinion with facts, ideas, and theories. What I don't put up with is having an opinion for opinion's sake. There is such a thing as a stupid opinion, and stupid people are not welcome on my channel, because I'm racist like that. Laters!